Okay, let's see how this goes. I think this is part 6, I think. If I'm wrong, I'll fix it. Black and white picture books. I came to the conclusion that woodblock printing wasn't good for picture books, but I couldn't let myself give up there. On the way back home, Lutz and I discussed what went wrong. They say that failure is the mother of success, so working out what went wrong should be a step towards succeeding next time. Yeah, makes sense. Why do you think things went bad? Asked Lutz while nodding, and I got to thinking. 3 issues sprung to mind immediately. First of all, I think the art was too complicated for wood carving. Wilma's detailed illustrations were a bad match for woodcuts that have to be carved out with precision. It would be unreasonable to make Wilma redraw the same art for each picture book, so I would need to find either another method of printing that didn't involve woodcuts, or alternatively, have Wilma adopt a more simplistic style. However, Wilma had never seen art outside of what adorned the temple halls. I couldn't expect her to be able to just up and change her style on the spot. At the very least, I would need an example she could mimic and learn from. My mirrored writing wasn't the best either. I'll need to be more careful when writing. I think a little more focus should fix it. Maybe I could have someone with me to double check what I'm doing. At that point, wouldn't it be better just to make separate blocks for the art and writing? That way the art block will be fine even if you get the letters wrong. You're a genius. I kind of visualized the writing and the art together since it was a picture book for kids learning to read, but I had more options than that. For instance, I could have art on the left page with text on the right page, or art on the top of the page with writing on the bottom. The bottom of the page. Last is the carving. There were a lot of mistakes that stood out in the art. Mistakes like the lines of the art going off course, or a letter being missing stood out a lot once the page was printed, but my assertion made Lutz pout a little. That's because we didn't have the tools to carve properly. My brothers weren't bad carvers or anything. You don't have the tools for carving? Aren't you from a family of carpenters? I asked. Recalling what I knew about Lutz's family, he shrugged. My family's got tons of big tools for cutting up wood since we're having construction, but we don't have tools for really precise carving. We normally don't need them. Now that he mentioned it, the tools Dade usually used for work and the ones he needed to maintain his home wouldn't be the kinds of tools necessary for precise carving. My dad had a lot of tools for big projects, but when it came to carving, he only had knives at best. That art's just too detailed to carve with knives. What? They carved that woodcut with knives? One could say the woodcut was very well done for something carved with knives. Really, I should have prepared carving tools for them before giving them the job. I'll have to remember to give them tools when I ask them to carve something from now on. Could you tell them I'm sorry and thank you? Yeah, sure. But how did all this turn into a kid's Bible anyway? Asked Lutz, so I thought back to how making a picture book for the baby turned into making a children's Bible. I guess because Wilma can only draw religious art, so it doesn't have to be a Bible. Remember, this is for a baby. I had to leave the art to Wilma since everyone hated on my drawings, and since Wilma only drew religious art, I changed the picture book to a children's Bible to match. Wait. Now that he mentions it, won't a children's Bible be kind of useful for a baby? I realized the horrible truth. Books for babies and books for children were a lot different. I couldn't just bundle them all together as books for young people. Okay, I'll make a black and white picture book for the baby first. The children's Bible can come later. We've only got paper and ink, so anything you make's gotta be a black and white picture book. That's true, but this is a little different. I needed to go back to the drawing board and think about what kind of picture book I would want to give the baby. I thought back to what I had learned in books about babies and in an infant health class. First of all, it was thought that newborn babies had blurry vision. Eyesight was tightly connected to the development of the brain, and they grew by seeing a variety of different things each day. They would grow to distinguish bright colors like red by the time they were 3 to 4 months old, and their eyes would start to track movement. They had about the same eyesight as an adult about a year after their birth, but before that, outlines tended to be a little blurry, and they struggled to distinguish more faint colors. That meant a book for babies below the age of 1 would want to have high contrast and easy to understand shapes. For colors, it was easiest for them to recognize white, black, and red, whereas for shapes, it was easiest for them to recognize distinct ones like circles, triangles, and squares. That was why books for 0 to 2-year-old babies had simple lines, bright colors, and simple text that repeated itself. I thought back on picture books for babies I had seen, and I remembered a black and white one with nothing but shapes in their names. Even I could manage to draw something like that. I'm staying home today and make a picture book for the baby. Alright, I'll contact the temple and come help out once I've checked up on the mine workshop. Once you start making something, you're always a danger to yourself and others. Mine, gotta keep an eye on you. Let's shook his head with exasperation, and unable to argue, I immediately changed the topic. Okay, I want some thick paper for this. Could you bring about 10 finished pieces from the workshop for me to purchase? Although I was the forewoman of the mine workshop, I needed to buy the paper from Let's to keep the workshop's financial records in order. And so Let's came to my house the next day after third bell. Oh, this place is a mess. Appa's gonna be ticked.
What, is that your supper? Okay, then what's your supper?
Soot pens, my notepad made of failed paper, and slate pens were scattered all over the table. If Mom were here, she would definitely tell me to clean up, but with her and Thule at work, there was no one to get mad at me. I was sketching designs on my slate to brainstorm what I wanted to draw in the picture book. Once I decided on something, I flipped to a new page on my notepad and drew it with a soot pen. It was easier to get an idea of what the black and white art would look like on paper. Dad had a tool for drawing straight lines in his toolbox, so I took that out and was using it to help me draw. I drew a triangle, then a square, then stopped when it was time to draw a circle. I wanted a compass for it. Les, do you have a compass at your place? Something that looks like this and makes pretty circles by, I drew a compass on the slate and used 2 fingers to demonstrate how it worked, earning a nod from Let's. Oh, a compass. I felt like we used to have one, but not anymore. Darn, no helping that. Guess I'll try substituting it with some other stuff. I got some of the thread stored nearby and wrapped it around the end of the soot pen. This would be easier if I had a pointed pen, but I didn't, so I wrapped the thread around a nail I found in the toolbox instead. I held down the flat end of the nail with my left finger, pulled the soap pen away until the thread was taut, then moved it around in a circle. Everything would be fine as long as I didn't move the nail. Whoa, nice! Most people didn't need to draw perfect circles, and those who did for work just used compasses. Les had never seen my thread method before and sounded impressed. It wasn't common for someone to compliment me. Feeling a bit proud, I drew various other circles, only to find that tiny circles were hard to get right. I would definitely want a template ruler or stencil templates for drawing a bunch of shapes. Let's, do you know if anywhere sells template rulers or stencil templates? You lost me. Something like this, a sheet of thin metal or plastic that has holes cut out of it to reflect shapes of varying sizes. They were really convenient for drawing the same pattern or shape over and over, since you just have to trace along the edges. If compasses existed, stencil templates had to exist too. But Let's just shook his head in confusion even after I drew one for him. He had apparently never seen one before. How do you use those things? You trace the pen along the edges to draw whichever of the shapes you want. Couldn't you make one of those from thick paper? Wow, Let's, you're a genius. I started using a thick piece of paper Let's brought for the picture book to instead make a stencil template. I drew circles, triangles, and so on with gradually increasing size, and all I had to do was cut them out to complete the template. It was only after Let's and I finished drawing the shapes together that I realized how difficult cutting them would be. We literally didn't have the tools for it. This is too small for a knife to cut, exclaimed Let's. Looking at the knives we had and the size of the shapes on the paper, I had to slump my shoulders. We could manage to cut out the big circle, and most of the straight lines would be fine, but the small circles were out of the question. This will just be a repeat of the woodcut without proper tools. Let's have Johan make a precision knife for us. What are those? Small, thin knives, kind of like pens. It would be best to really iron out what I wanted, since I would be ordering one from Johan. Let's and I changed into our apprentice clothes and went to the smithy with our guild cards and a neatly written supply order on Bookworm paper. Craftsman's Alley was on the south side of town, so Johan's smithy wasn't too far from my place. Hello. Hey, welcome. The foreman must have just been dealing with customers, as when we walked in, he was sitting at the table with a bunch of boards in front of him. He shot me a grin, reminding me of when I ordered the styluses. You're that little girl from before. Got another order? Yes, is Johan here? Yeah, take a seat. I'll call him right over. He stacked the boards and carried them to the back while yelling at Johan that he had a customer. His deep voice echoed through the workshop, and Johan came rushing out in no time, his orange hair bundled up. Sir, oh, it's the Gilberta Company. Hello. Hi, I would like you to make a precision knife for me. Please take a look at this. I held out the Bookworm paper supply order and turned it around to show the blueprints I had sketched out. Johan felt the paper curious, then narrowed his eyes at the design I drew. We get a lot of orders for big blades, but nothing this small and narrow. What in the world do you need this for? You're not going to be able to cut anything with a blade this small. It's for cutting plant paper. I need a small blade to cut out tiny circles from it. This paper, huh? I've never touched any plant paper before. Johan gripped the paper between his fingers, flipped it over repeatedly, and shook it in front of his eyes to get a feel of it. After letting him satisfy his curiosity, I pointed at the blueprints. I wrote a lot of detailed information about the measurements and usage since I knew Johann would want to know all of it. So the handle can be made from out of wood, but I would like it made so you can swap out the blades. For safety's sake, the blade needs to fit perfectly into the handle, which is why I want to hire you for this, Johann. It's very precise work. Johann asked about the blade switching while looking at the blueprint. I gave detailed answers in reply, and soon enough, Johann's eyes were burning with determination. It seemed I had ignited his craftsman spirit. Pretty interesting. It being so easy to swap blades with this design is something else. I would also like either a cap to put over it or a special case to carry it. The blade will be dangerously sharp, and its thinness will make it easy to break. Guess I should make a bunch of extra blades to swap out just in case. After settling on things, I paid the foreman the advance payment with my guild card. Would you please deliver it to the Gilberta Company when you're finished? I wouldn't be able to pay with physical money if they sent it to my place, but if it were delivered to Benno, he would pay for it immediately without issue. I could then pay him in advance with my guild card, which would save me the trouble of carrying around coins. Let's mine. On our way home from the temple 10 days after ordering the precision knife, the guard in front of the Gilberta Company called us down. Mark had told him to direct us inside to get our delivery. Johann arrived with this box this afternoon. He seemed very excited about it. Mark gave us a thin box, which I immediately took home to finish the stencil template. I didn't have a proper cutting mat for it, which meant I would have to use a table and try not to cut too deep. That would probably hurt the blade, but it was sharp and easy enough to use that I finished the stencil template without any issues. I put the finished stencil template on top of my notepad and went to town with a soot pen, resulting in a proper black circle. If I use a stencil to put ink on the picture book, won't that make carving out of a woodcut unnecessary? Wow, am I actually a genius? To put my idea into practice, I used the template to design art for the black and white picture book. I drew a large triangle, then another upside down beneath that one, and finally added a rectangle to make a tree-like shape. I drew a big circle, then put 2 circle eyes and a circle nose inside to make a face. Then I drew a carved hexagon with a compass to make a flower. I was having so much fun drawing that I didn't stop until my family told me to, at which point I cut out the art. Look, Les, I finished! I showed Les my finished art with excitement. Each was about the size of an A5 piece of paper, the size of the original A4 paper cut in half. Les furrowed his brows at the 10 piece of the paper and looked at me like he didn't know what to say. Mine, is the baby really going to like that art? Of course! Black and white art has a lot of contrast, and since those are just different shapes put together, artistic talent has nothing to do with it. My explanation just made Lutz look even more doubtful. Well, if you're happy, that's fine with me. Despite his suspicion, Lutz started making the picture book in the workshop that afternoon. This time put on the black ink with the paintbrush over the stencil. The bristles would push the paper on the smaller parts of the art, so when it came to that, I had him tap it with a small stick that had a cloth wrapped around one end. Well, amazing, it worked. What is it, Sister Mine? What's it for? The children gathered around the art and peered down at it. While having a gray priest set the pages on the shelf to dry, I answered them with a smile. It's for a baby's picture book. A baby? None of them really seemed to get it. They tilted their heads and avoided eye contact, each one of them clearly deciding to keep to themselves rather than risk saying anything. None of them understood. If only the world could catch up to my genius. I felt a little isolated, but I finished the pages for the black and white picture book. Ideally, I would want the pages to spread out like a folding screen, which meant sticking them to boards, cutting holes in the boards, and connecting them with string. Oh, I want to make the hide glue for this. Preparing for the children's Bible. Regardless of what everyone thought, I finished the pages for the baby's black and white picture book. That was enough to satisfy me as I walked home with Lutz, holding hands amid the chilly autumn air. Since we're making hide glue after winter prep is done, I want to get back to making the children's Bible, I said, wanting to finish a book soon since autumn was a season of reading. Lutz fell into thought. Are you going to try woodblock printing again? Cutting the paper would probably be easier if even you can handle it. Les was right. Making templates for the pages out of paper wouldn't be too hard. It didn't require any arm strength, as was evident by the fact that I could do it on my own. I won't need to write backwards if I'm just cutting the letters out with a knife, too. That will be a problem since picture books aren't that wordy. It will kind of hurt my wallet to buy some extra knives, but new projects having a high initial investment is nothing new to us. The precision knives were a bit expensive since each had to be ordered and custom made, but wood blocks weren't any better since I would need to order carving tools and such for them. Isn't that why you've been saving all that money anyway? One day I wanted to make letter punches for this world's alphabet and transition to movable type printing, but that would need a lot of letter punches. Each would need a lot of precision work, and making the punches out of metal would end up costing more than I could spend right now. It'll be a while before I could shift to movable type printing. I still got a long way to go before I can reach my Mr. Gutenberg. Who's that? A great man who accomplished so much he may as well be a god to me. My goal is to reach the same heights he did, but all I can do right now is improve what I have. Is there anything you think needs improving, Lutz? Do you know any tools that could hold the paper down while we're printing? The paper starts slipping the second I lose focus, and the ink gets all over my hand, which sucks pretty bad since it doesn't come off easy. Lutz was an apprentice merchant in a store that did business with nobles. He needed to keep up appearances, so it would be extremely bad if he had the same dirty hands as a craftsman. We could leave all the work to Grey Priest, but I knew that Lutz was really determined to make my inventions himself, which meant I just had to think of a way to do this without his hands getting dirty. It would probably help a lot if I could make a mimeograph frame. A what frame? Opening holes in boards to print with ink is called stenciling, and mimeographs are part of it. A mimeograph frame or net will hold down the paper so your hands don't get dirty, like this. I took out my diptych and stopped in place to start drawing. Lutz, stunned, pulled me to the side while yelling about not getting in people's way. You make a wooden frame that can open and close over a wooden stand big enough to hold paper. You attach the board to the frame with hinges with a net inside of the frame. When printing, you put the paper on the board, the stencil on top of it, close the frame to lock them into place, and then apply ink from above the net. If it just needs wood and a net, we might be able to make it ourselves. It wasn't that difficult to make outside of the stencil. Lutz would probably be able to make most of it himself. I would mainly be worried about the frame with the net attached. Lutz, do you think we could ask the craftsman who made the mat part of our cicada to make this too? Has he finished all the big mats for the workshop's larger cicadas? You'll have to ask Benno and Mark about that. The Gilberta company had just come into view, so on that note, the two of us went inside. Work seemed to be mostly over as some of the employees were already cleaning up. Everyone was calm, but I felt like they were in a hurry, so I looked around the store. Oh, if it isn't mine and Lutz. The office is open if you have any business. We would just get in the way by talking in the store, so Mark took us up to Benno's office without asking him first. He had been in the middle of looking over a ledger of some kind, but he forgave us with a sigh. Benno, can I borrow Mark tomorrow? There's something I want to order from the craftsman who makes our cicadas, and I would like Mark to come with us to the workshop. Is the craftsman free right now? I asked, to which Benno nodded while rolling up the ledger. He's delivered all the orders, should be free if nobody else has ordered anything. What are you planning to make this time? A frame with a net. My answer made Benno frown in confusion. A net? What do you need that for? It's so Lutz's hands don't get dirty when he's using ink. Benno, failing to understand my explanation at all, looked at Lutz for an explanation. Despite having just explained in detail what a mimeograph was to him, he shook his head. Forget it, I'll pass the word on to Mark. What time do you need him? I need to practice the Haarspiel in the morning, so sometime early in the afternoon. That's good for us. Tomorrow, then. After lunch the next day, Lutz and I went to the Gilberta company, then visited the craftsman with Mark. You all again, huh? The craftsman greeted us with a grimace so intense I thought his furrowed brows were going to fuse. It was hard to believe he would show such open displeasure in a customer. Don't tell me you want more of those mat things. I finally finished that hellish order of them. Give me a break. It seemed that making large cicadas was rough work for him. I shook my head as I glanced between the craftsman's exhausted look and Mark's calm smile. No, we want to order a wooden frame. A wooden frame? Go ask a carpenter, said the craftsman while making a showing motion with his hand at the door. Well, it's not just any frame. We want, a silk net in the middle of the frame. Can you do that? It doesn't need to be that tightly knit of a net. We just need it for holding down paper so it doesn't slide around. I took out my stone slate and drew the frame I wanted for him. He narrowed his eyes and glared at the art, then let out a defeated sigh. I can manage that. It'd be a pain, but not impossible. Will you take the job? Your work takes a lot of time, but you pay well. I'll take any job except making more of those cicada things. He agreed to make our netted frame for us, so Mark signed the order that would have it delivered to the Gilberta company when finished. Mark, there's one more place I want to go. Would you mind stopping by the smithy? I want to order more knives from there. Also, I want to see if they can make my roller for me. We would need multiple precision knives to better produce templates for books. I wanted one each for Lutz and me for cutting out letters, plus one for Wilma. I also wanted a roller to spread the ink more evenly. But the only rollers I knew were rubber rollers and spongy rollers. Who knew if they had something that could work like that? If not, we could try using a wrapped up cloth, but that wouldn't feel good to use. We went to the smithy and ordered 2 more precision knives. Johann accepted with a smile on his face. He seemed extremely excited to take jobs that used the full extent of his talent. I would also like a roller, which is like... I drew one on my stone slate, explained what it was. I tried explaining what rubber and sponge were, but as expected, they didn't ring any bells. Rolling around the tube to spread ink, huh? You sure have a lot of weird ideas. I want a handle attached to the roller spindle so I can roll it around smoothly without it clattering. Any kind of tube should work with a cloth wrapped around it, so I'll leave the materials you use up to you. Ideally, there would be some springy material that the ink stuck to as well, but if not, we would manage. Johan nodded repeatedly at my explanation. That wouldn't be too hard, then. Want me to deliver it to the Gilberta Company again? Yes, thank you. After leaving the smithy, let's not say our goodbyes to Mark before starting to walk home ourselves. I guess the art is the last problem to tackle. Printing with stencils will make the art end up looking like silhouettes. We can have some thin lines thanks to the precision knives, but how should we change Wilma's art style to fit this? I think it'll be easiest if you get some kind of example for her. Not gonna lie, your explanations kinda suck, and I don't think she'd get you if you tried to explain. It was true that it was nigh impossible to understand something you hadn't seen through just verbal explanations. I'm not sure how helpful it would be, but maybe I should try drawing some examples. You mind? You sure about that? I'll draw based on Wilma's art. It'll be fine, you jerk. Lutz looked at me with even more worry than before. All I did was draw cartoony art once, and now he was convinced I was the worst artist in the world for some reason. My art was normal on Earth. Normal, I tell you. Lutz kept looking worried the whole way home. After we separated at the well, I went home to start drawing the silhouettes of the goddesses with Wilma's art as a reference and a soot pen as my sword. It was simple but easier to distinguish than the woodblock print art. Yeah, I think this actually looks pretty good, but that was just my impression as a Japanese person, and I had no idea if the people of this world would feel the same. It was possible that those used to extremely detailed paintings would reject the simplicity of silhouette art. The next morning, I put the messy woodblock printed art and my silhouette art into my bag to show Wilma. I also got soot pens and the precision knife ready to give to her. Morning, Lutz. This is how the art turned out. Thoughts? I showed Lutz the silhouette goddess I drew when we met up. He opened his eyes wide and let out a sigh of relief after looking the art over. Hey, it's not too bad. It's a lot easier to see than the woodblock stuff. Perfect. I'll try and see if Wilma can manage to draw more like this. After lunch, I headed to the orphanage with all my stuff ready. Rosina accompanied me rather than Fran since we were going to see Wilma. Welcome, sister mine. I put the woodblock art on a dining hall table and pushed it to Wilma. Her expression clouded after she picked it up and saw what it looked like. It wasn't the art she had envisioned in her head. Your art is so detailed, Wilma, that after carving it into woodcuts, the result looks like what you see there. I believe that this is a waste of your beautiful art, so I have devised a style that you might like to adopt for this. I said while pushing the silhouette art her way. I was a bit hesitant to show my amateurish art to a pro, but the discussion would go nowhere if I didn't. This style enables printing that does not need carving, but I am not sure if this style would be universally accepted. I would like to hear your thoughts, Wilma, as both a lover of the arts and a talented artist. Wilma looked at the silhouette art and gave a little gasp. You drew this, sister mine? I tried making an example of what art would look like when made of just black and white, thin cut out of paper. What do you think? It would require a huge shift in style, but do you think you can manage? I watched Wilma to see how she would react, and after silently looking at the silhouette art for a bit, she nodded with her brown eyes sparkling happily. I will try my hand at this style. It is foreign to me, but I would like to give it my best try. In that case, I will present you with these soot pens and a precision knife. You may experiment as you like with the paper I gave you in the past. Here's the thick paper for the template. I will try printing with your first completed picture and see how it goes. Wilma looked down at the tools with sparkling eyes and explained how to use them. That was enough to ease my worries. No doubt Wilma would draw something far, far more wonderful than my attempt. While Wilma was experimenting with the new art style and stencil technique, I got to work writing the text on paper and cutting them out to make the templates. Johann finished the precision knives and roller faster than I expected, so Lutz and I took our time cutting out the letters using his tools. It was work as difficult and precise as you might think, but I worked hard, knowing that when we finished, I would have a printed book ready for me. The craftsman finished the net before Wilma finished her art. I went to Lutz's house and asked Ralph and Sieg to make the frame for the net and the wooden stand. What the heck do you need this for? I need it so Lutz doesn't get his hands dirty with ink. Please, I need your help. I drew the design on a piece of paper and thrust it toward them. They were used to seeing blueprints at work, so Sieg and Ralph got started right after looking at them. They brought up boards and nails while casually chatting among themselves. How's this look? Wow, you're both amazing. That's exactly what I wanted. Those two apprentice carpenters for you, they worked fast and without error, and finished a perfect frame for the net in no time. Upon being complimented, Ralph snorted and said, I'm getting more like a craftsman just like Lutz is getting more like a merchant, in a teasing tone while looking at Lutz. All right then, Mr. Craftsman, get to work on the stand. Lutz puffed out his cheeks, and his brothers laughed while getting back to work. Ah, this ain't gonna fit. Lex, could you bring that board over there? Shave the wood off right. You're gonna be the one using it, yeah? Don't give yourself any splinters. Sheesh, do some work yourselves, you two. They were working Lex hard like always, but the prickly atmosphere from before was completely gone. I sighed to myself in relief. Seek, could you add this on so the net stays on the frame? At my request, Seek added metal teardrop-shaped turn fasteners to the frame. They would keep the net locked in place on the frame. Then hinges were added to connect the frame to the stand. I put a 5mm thick board on the stand as a guide to allow the paper when printing. And there it was. We finished the printing stand much faster than I expected. Thanks, you two. You really helped us here. Lutz looked away, still a little embarrassed to be thanking his family after all that had happened. His brothers also looked away awkwardly. This kind of thing's no problem at all. Yeah, we're pros. This is just a little side job. I also always expressed my enormous gratitude for Thule with energetic hugs, but this was the best the brothers could manage. Still, it was a big step up from not talking at all. I watched them with a smirk until eventually they noticed me looking and stiffened up. Mine, stop staring. The fact that all three of them said that at the same time just made me smirk harder. Let's get mine out of here. Yeah, we'll clean up here. You're coming with me. Coming with me, mine. I was dragged out of Lutz's place after witnessing a level of cooperation they'd never managed before. That was a shame. I wanted to keep watching their heartwarming exchange. Mine, stop grinning and think. Is that all you need? It's just Wilma's art that's left, right? Let's forcibly change the topic. It seemed he really didn't want to talk about how he and his brothers were doing. I giggled and thought over everything I needed to make the book. We had paper. We had ink. We had the stencil templates with the text. We had a roller. We had a stand for printing. Indeed, all we needed to finish the book's contents was Wilma's art. But it would be a little sad for the front cover to be blank white paper. Hey, Lutz, if you have the time, could you make some paper with flowers inside? I want that for the front cover. Oh, like what you made all that time ago? It sure was pretty. Yeah, it shouldn't be a problem. I'll take the kids to the forest tomorrow. With everything else done and waiting on Wilma's art, I got to spend my afternoon basking in the bliss of reading in the book room. One day, after finishing lunch and pumping myself up for more reading, a kid from the orphanage came and delivered a message to Gil, who came up to my room. Sister Mine, Wilma's finished the art template. The kid that stopped by said she wanted you to come get them yourself since she's got something to ask you. I felt my eyes light up at Gil's report. The templates being ready meant we could get to printing. Gil, prepare the workshop for printing after lunch. Rosina, shall we head to the orphanage? Sister Mine, please steady yourself. The orphanage has not yet received the divine blessings. Rosina's reminder made me realize I had forgotten that the orphanage ate lunch after me. Gil laughed as I sat back down. I'll come get you when the workshop's ready. Maybe memorize some prayers in the meantime, he said, reminding me of another task the high priest had given me. I worked on memorizing prayers as suggested while fidgeting with excitement. The high priest had told me to memorize these prayers perfectly since they would be used if the Knight's Order were to request assistance from the temple during autumn. Oh, right. I should go check and see how my ceremonial robes are coming along. After being told the kids had finished lunch, I eagerly went to the orphanage with Rosina. Wilma was waiting for us in the dining hall, wearing an anxious frown of worry in place of her usual gentle smile. On the table was a piece of paper. Please look if you would. My goodness! Rosina let out an awed cry after peeking over my shoulder. A delicately sliced template had all of Wilma's trademark style while still being composed of simple lines. The art portrayed the god of darkness meeting the goddess of light. The god of darkness was mostly cut out, and the goddess of light had the shadows her hair and the creases in her clothing portrayed brilliantly despite mostly being white paper. I wanted to print it right away to see how it looked when inked. This is perfect. Let's print it at once. Gil should have the workshop already prepared. I stood up to go to the workshop immediately with Rosina, holding the template. Sister Mine. Wilma looked at me as if she had just resolved to make the biggest decision of her life. Her lips trembled as she attempted to speak, and only after clasping her hands so tightly her knuckles went wide did she manage to choke out words in a trembling voice. May I please accompany you to the workshop? This is quite all right with me, but will you be okay? I had heard that Wilma had never visited the workshop for fear of all the men there. She was worried about the kids, but her attempts to go there were always stalled by shaking legs. My fear of men remains as strong as ever, but I have just been ever so curious about how my art will look when printed. This woodblock printing did not go as expected, and I do not know if this new method will be more successful. To me, the woodblock printed art was just a little weird, but it seemed to have left a big negative impact on Wilma. I could understand very well just how curious Wilma was to see if her changing her style and cutting out silhouette art instead of adding tons of detail would make a difference. But would Wilma be able to handle it emotionally? There were gray priests in the workshop whether she liked it or not, and there would be no avoiding them. Would that be too much for her to bear with her fear of adult men? I believe that my spirits will be sturdy if I remain with you, Sister Mine, but Wilma's hesitant words blew away my worry for her in an instant. In its place arose a fierce determination, a divine mission to protect Wilma at any cost. I shall allow no man to step foot near you, Wilma. Accompany me, and you shall be safe. Sister mine, interjected Rosina, is it not the job of an attendant to protect her mistress from men? She sounded exasperated, but I didn't care. What mattered was Wilma being motivated to leave the girls' building and the orphanage, and the fact that she was counting on me. I took Wilma's hand gently as she rested a hand on her chest, smiling with relief, and then guided her down the stairs to head to the mine workshop through the back entrance. I will protect Wilma. I have to show her how reliable I can be. The moment I steeled my resolve, I slipped down the stairs and would have fallen down if not for Wilma embracing me from behind and lifting me back up. Are you quite all right, Sister mine? Yes, certainly. Sister mine, it is good to be enthused, but you mustn't allow yourself to lose your composure, advised Rosina with a smile, sending daggers through my chest. Oh shit, am I already at that point where I've done 2 chapters? Really? Huh. I'll do one more. Binding children's Bibles. Wow, it's Wilma! Wilma's here! Wilma, I helped prepare the ink. The moment Wilma entered the workshop for the first time, the children let out cries of excitement and gathered around her, each starting to explain what work they did and what they had learned already. The sheer number of kids resulted in an impenetrable child barrier that no grey priest could sneak through, which meant I had nothing to do despite being resolved to protect her. Shall we begin printing, then? Slumping my shoulders sadly, I headed to where Lutz was waiting. Wilma followed after me with the child barrier still stuck to her. Lutz, would you please print the front page and the back page first? The back page is the one with the printing information. I would like to ensure that the roller spreads ink evenly. Let's place a piece of paper on the printing stand, then put the 2 pieces of template paper over that. The stand was A4 size, while the template paper was A5 size, exactly half as big. Our plan for this picture book was to have templates for both the text and art, with one on top of the stand and the other on the bottom. For the first try, the top would have the front page, and the bottom would have the back page. Like this. After checking with me that he was doing it right, Lutz lowered the netted frame and took out the ink. He used the marble slate to mix it with a little oil, using the scraper, then put some ink on the roller and rolled it around to spread it evenly. With all the preparations complete, Lutz glanced at me. I nodded, and he slowly began moving the roller on top of the net. He wrote it vertically and horizontally multiple times each, then set the roller on the marble slab. Then he lifted up the wooden frame, and the template paper stuck to the net thanks to the ink, leaving only the printed paper on the stand. The words were cleanly printed on top of the white paper. There weren't any smudges, and the lines weren't shaky. The printing was a complete success. Please put the paper on the drawing shelf. After checking the printed title and the publication dates, I handed the paper to a nearby grey priest who put it on the shelf. Meanwhile, let's put a fresh sheet of paper on the stand and began printing more. The templates wouldn't last too long, so we needed to print as many sheets with them as we could. My plan was to print 30 copies of this picture book. One to bring home, one to leave in my chambers, one for Lutz, one for Benno, one for the high priest, and the rest for the orphanage to use as educational material. Please prepare to print the art and story text next. My instructions made Wilma tense up. Let's swap out the templates, removing the title and publication templates to put the art and text templates there instead. He made sure to angle them carefully, since when the pages was held horizontally and folded, the art would be on the right side and the text would be on the left side. He left a decent amount of white space in the middle, since that part would end up being part of a big crease when we threaded the completed book together. I felt Wilma and Lutz both looking at me, so after making eye contact with both of them, I gave a gradual nod. Lutz spread the ink, looking just as tense as Wilma did. My heart was thumping at the same speed that Lutz moved the roller. Will it end up okay? Will the art look good enough for Wilma? As I watched on, praying for success, Lutz sat down aside the roller and lifted up the frame. I heard everyone watching, including myself, swallow hard. Wow, amazing! The first to speak were the children surrounding Wilma. Her art of the God of Darkness meeting the Goddess of Light was represented beautifully in black and white. I had expected that the art would look great ever since I first saw the templates, but it wasn't until I saw the art ink that I appreciated just how striking it was. The God of Darkness enveloping the Goddess of Light in his midnight cloak while she shined her light upon him created a beautiful contrast, and there was small Wilma-like details, such as wrinkles in clothes. Hold on. And curves in hair that I hadn't been able to see from the template alone. This is truly wonderful art. I turned to look at Wilma and saw her staring at the printed illustration while shedding quiet tears. Are you okay, Wilma? Forgive me, I am just ever so relieved, and I do not even know what to say. Wilma stammering, wiped away her tears. The kids patted her back and tried to console her. To me, Wilma fighting back to hold back tears of happiness as children consoled her was the very picture of a biblical painting. Wilma really is a saint. Naturally, everyone in the workshop found themselves looking at Wilma as she wept with her cheeks tinted a rosy red. She soon noticed that everyone's eyes were on her and immediately turned to leave the workshop, her entire face bright red with embarrassment. Sister mine, I will begin drawing the next illustration. After that, we resumed printing each time Wilma completed an illustration. The kids worked hard to make paper. In the meantime, while the Grey Priest pounded out more ink. They also went to the forest to gather fruits and mushrooms to dry and went to buy firewood for winter. Mine, that's the last of the printing den. What's up next? Asked Let's on our way home. One day, the sharp chill in the air making it impossible to forget how deep into autumn we were. It seemed that they had finally finished printing all the pages for the Bibles. That meant it was time for bookbinding, where the pages will finally be turned into actual books. Next up is bookbinding. I'm definitely going to the workshop tomorrow. Do you have to? It'd be a lot easier if you just explained what to do. It seemed that the Grey Priest found it harder to work with an Apprentice Blue Shrine Maiden like me watching. But I couldn't contain my desire to be directly involved with the bookbinding, especially since this would be all new to them. Alright, explain. You said it was a bookbinding? Yep, bookbinding turns the pages into a book. Once the printed pages have all been completely dried, we fold them in half. A clean fold down the middle that leaves the art on one side and the text on the other. This will need tables, so maybe better to do this in the orphanage's dining hall. I explained step by step while watching Let's write it all down. Once a page is folded, start stacking them on top of each other, all of them facing the exact same direction. No matter what, don't let different pages get mixed in or mess up the orientation. Oh, and right, use a precision knife to slice the page with the title and publication information in half. Next afternoon, stacks of printed paper were brought to the orphanage dining hall while I watched. Each table was polished to a shine as to not get any filth on the pages. I couldn't help but let a sigh of bliss at the sight of the stacks of paper in which the different sets of pages were distinguished by being angled horizontally, then vertically, and so on. The smell of new paper and ink was like a dream. I was so happy that I wanted to start dancing right then and there. Now then, please summon the squad leaders. The workshop workers were split into groups to make their jobs easier. Each squad would be folding different sets of pages. The Grey Priests were squad leaders and watched over the apprentices. Gil advised me that the kids were too young to even be apprentices probably wouldn't be able to fold paper properly. So they were off making soup of Wilma. Take care that the edges match perfectly. Take care to fold in this proper direction. Take care to inform me when all pages from a set are completed. Once Let's finished reading off his list of warnings, the squads began folding the paper. Please match the edges more carefully. Start by holding the paper here, then fold like so. I gracefully walked between the tables while instructing them on how to fold properly. Paper was expensive and had just recently been introduced in the city, so none of them had ever folded any before. Not even the adult Grey Priests were capable of matching the edges perfectly at the start. It was like watching a clumsy foreigner attempting origami for the first time. No, my precious books, the pages are going to end up all slanted. Cradling my head at the horrible yet undeniable reality, I stealthily whispered to Let's, can I fold some of it myself? Not right now, you're going to sit back and watch. I should have had all these practice with ripped paper first. As I watched on, anxious on just how the books would look in the end, the poorly folded pages piled on. I checked each and sent back any that were just unreasonably bad. Making books of paper that poorly folded was out of the question. Other people might forgive books with horribly slanted pages, but I had higher standards for my own work. Once all the papers were folded, I had them line the tables up next to each other. By going down the line of tables, one could assemble the pages of the book in order. I had gone through the same process when making little guidebooks back in my Irano days, so it wasn't new for me. It was the first time for everyone working here, though. First, take the title page, then move down the table and take one sheet of paper from the next pile, which you put on top of the title page. Then go further down the table, and so on. Take care not to flip the pages or take more than one from the pile. I explained while speedily grabbing pages for myself. It would be nice if we had staples to staple the pages together, but this world didn't have anything so convenient. I returned to my seat with a full set of paper, and Fran welcomed me back by sighing, "Sister mine," with a weary expression. I understood that he wanted to tell me not to get directly involved, but I averted eye contact and didn't let it get to me. I needed these pages so I could make an example and secure a set for myself. I'll be bringing these home with me. My apologies for acting selfish. As everyone else gathered sets of paper, I folded the pages delicately while fixing the creases for my nails. The paper was so thick that I should have prepared rulers or something of the sort ahead of time. Though thinking of how difficult it would be to fix a solid ruler fold, maybe I had been wise not to. As there were only enough pages for 30 books, the books were assembled quickly and stacked into 3 stacks of 10 books each. With each book's worth of paper shifted 90 degrees to prevent overlap. They then carefully carried the stacks back to the workshop. We will need further tools to continue, so that will be all for today. Thank you for your work, everyone. I put my pages into my bag and left as soon as I could continue my bookbinding. Let's get a piece of flower paper from the workshop and brought it to me. I can help if you're going to keep going at home. Seeing you works a lot easier than just listening to instructions. There was no kind of glue for me to use to stick the pages together since we hadn't made hide glue yet. For that reason, I wanted to bind the book using a 4-hole stitch, which was the most fundamental form of classical Japanese bookbinding. I'm home! Hi, Mine, you're back early. Oh, hi, Let's. When I got home, Tuli was already back from the forest. I took out my bag and immediately showed her the bundle of pages I had brought back to bind together. Check it out, Tuli, a children's Bible. I finally printed one. Wow, these pictures are way prettier. Tuli let out an excited cry while flipping through the pages. It seemed she didn't understand the true beauty of the black and white pictures I had drawn myself. I pursed my lips a little. But the pages are kind of all over the place. Won't this be hard to read? I'm about to bind it into a proper book. Oh, and would you mind helping? It'd be nice if you went to the workshop to help teach the kids there, too. I'm not allowed to do work there. I took out the flower paper meant for the cover for my book bag and set it on the table while Tuli tilted her head a bit in confusion. I don't mind helping, but what can I even do? I want to sew the pages together with a thread and needle, so you'll probably be better at it than me. Oh, okay, but give me a book for helping, please. I want to learn to read, too, asked Tuli, looking a little embarrassed. It seemed that Tuli started wanting to learn to read after seeing Les and me writing on our diptychs and slates, plus Karina writing notes while taking orders. Of course, I was more than glad to give her a book. I would even be her personal tutor if she wanted me to. We can read this together since I'll be leaving this one at home. I'll lend you my slate, too. I'll be maybe bad at sewing, but I can teach you to read. I was planning on teaching the orphanage kids to read over the winter, so why don't you join in? You learn faster than when you have someone to compete against. I searched through Dad's tool set to find what I needed for bookbinding, then lined up the tools on the table. All in all, I took out a ruler, a hammer, a board, and an awl. First, make sure the edges are lined up perfectly. This is the last chance you have to fix them. Once that's done, use a ruler or something similar to tighten the fold, like this. I ran the ruler over the fold to demonstrate, then Les and Tuli did the same with their stacks of paper. Once the fold is good, double-check the sides, then take the spine and tap the paper against the table so they all line up, then open the inner binding holes, which are used for binding the inner part of the book without the cover. After gathering the paper together on top of the board, I used a ruler to measure it and mark those holes on it with a sit pen. I want you to open the holes on these dots. Just hold the awl directly above them, then hit it with a hammer. I held down the edges while Let's hit the awl down on top onto the marked spots. Tuli, could you run a thread through the needle? Then run the needle through the middle hole from the front. Even putting needles through holes was beyond my level of dexterity, but Tuli was used to this kind of work. She prepared the needle and thread in no time, then got the needle through the hole easily. Then passed it to the top hole from behind, and then go through the bottom hole from the front. Then go from the back of the bottom hole through the middle hole. I had Tuli cut the thread once that was done so I could tie the top and bottom ends of the string together such that they sandwiched the strings together that passed from the top hole to the bottom hole. I then had Tuli once again cut the ends of the string, then had Let's hit the knot with a hammer. Crushing the knot here makes the front cover look prettier. Once the hammering was done, Let's roll the steps down into his diptych. I used that time to press the ruler against the edges of the book and find bits sticking out, which I cut off with a precision knife. Naturally, I'd make corner covers for it, but that needs glue, so we're skipping straight to putting on the cover. For that, we're using the pretty paper with flowers in it. I folded the paper, filled with tiny flowers and plants while Tuli peered over my shoulder. Wow, that's cute. Right? We're cutting it in half too, since half goes on the front and half goes on the back. Then we're going to position the ruler where the outer binding holes will be, and use the awl to scratch out a little line. Once that's done, we'll put dots on the front cover and poke open holes like we did with the inner binding holes. I lined up the ruler and rather than risk dirtying the front cover with soot, pushed through the awl to make 4 imprints on the front cover, not 3. It was a little sad that I wasn't strong enough to just poke open holes myself. Alright, my turn. Let's held up the hammer and poked open the holes. Given that Tuli started threading the needle, she had guessed what she would be doing next. Put the needle through the second hole's back, then loop around the spine to go through the second hole's back again. Right, leave about as much thread as your pointer finger. Then open the book, drag the rest of the thread inside, and push it between the pages so you can't see them anymore. Like this. Push them a bit more through the needle. Like that, right, like that. Once you're done with that, push the needle through the front of the third hole, then loop around and do it again. The next step was to push it through the back of the fourth hole, loop around, then do it again. Then go around the spine of the book before going through the fourth hole again. Then go back into the top from the bottom and fill in any spots where the thread hasn't been. This is actually kind of simple, murmured Tuli while sliding the needle around. It was basically just going through the open parts of the holes one by one. So the sewing itself wasn't hard as long as you didn't lose track of where you were. All you had to do was keep the thread taut. Once you've sewn up to the top, put the back cover on top and take care of the thread. Just pass the needle through here and the thread will connect. Wow, it actually did! She moved the needle at my instruction and voiced her surprise at the resulting knot. Pull this thread hard to tighten it, then pass the needle through the second hole to get the knot there. It'll stay together easier that way. Whoa, that's awesome! Let's watch as Tuli tightened the thread and tried dropping the knot into the hole. It wasn't really getting in, so she used the needle to push it in before tightening the thread again. Now, just cut the thread and the book will be finished. I felt my chest heating up as I prepared to witness the completion of my first book. My whole body tightened up like it was being squeezed and my throat itched. My eyes watered and distorted my view of the not yet complete book. Here, mind you cut it, said Let's while handing me a thread cutter. Excuse me. Tuli nodded and lifted the needle above the book, making the leftover thread taut beneath it. I took the cutter with shaking hands and positioned the thread between its short blades. A tiny squeeze was all it took to cut the thread. As soon as the thread fell, I felt my tear ducts burst. Hot tears I had no hope of containing trickled down my cheeks one after another. We made it. We made it, Lutz. Not a clay tablet, not a mock-in, not a notepad of cobbled together paper, not a blank picture book with no words on it. I had made an actual book, one that I could proudly call a book with no hesitation. It took so long. So long. About 2 years had passed since I had vowed to make my own book, and finally I had finished one. It felt like a dream. Let's, who had been with me the entire time helping, was smiling ear to ear with wet eyes full of accomplishment. We didn't mind. Let's spread out his arms for me, so I hugged him tight and nodded repeatedly. I wouldn't have been able to do anything on my own. It was thanks to Letz's help that I managed to finish this book. It's all thanks to you and Tuli. Thank you. I'm so happy. I can hardly say how happy I am. I finally made a book, my own book that I've wanted for so long. Unable to wipe away my tears for fear of getting the book dirty with stained hands, I just kept staring at the newly finished book. It was a thin picture book of primitive Japanese binding. But thinking back on the journey it took to get to this point, I couldn't help but cry. I started with nothing. No stamina, no strength, no money, no paper, no ink, no tools. But I challenged the world anyway, and my work finally bore fruit. As I wallowed in the bliss of finishing a book, Let's shot me a challenging grin. But that's still just one book. You're going to make a lot more, right? You want to make so many books that you could read all day, every day, and never finish all of them. Am I right, mind? Yep. Letz's jade eyes were already set on his next target. He had to keep conquering challenge after challenge to keep up with his ambition. I finally wiped away my tears and smiled back at him. That's right, I'm going to make so many books we'll need a library. That's a promise. Okay, we finally got to that point. She finally made a book. I hope you guys are excited for more, and I'll see y'all next time.